Hey everybody, hope you're doing amazing and welcome to the, right now we're at the Grand Forks International Airport and I'm going to show you a video today. A lot of you were asking about, hey, what's it like when you depart out of a short grass runway in a big Twin Cessna? So we're going to go do that today. Ironically, the last video I made when I had to bring the airplane out of Manvel, I had forgotten my phone, so I didn't have anything to record it with. So anyway, went out today just to have a little fun on a beautiful Sunday morning. It was only about 47 degrees, so it was a great day to go fly. In the video, I'm going to show you the takeoff out of Manvel, and there's going to be a couple important things. The first thing that I mentioned is if you're a multi-engine pilot, you know, you have this decision, and the decision is at what point do we abort a takeoff, and at what point do we continue a takeoff? And in this aircraft, the published red line is about 80 knots, so around 80 knots, let's call it. And so 80 knots for you multi-engine pilots, you know that is the point at which if I lose an engine and I get slower than that, you know, we're going to lose directional control. So when I take off, I've got a couple of things that are really important that I'm going through in my decision making. And the first thing that really is going to be tricky is in a soft field scenario, we're going to try to add as much back pressure as possible and get airborne as quickly as possible. But then, as you know, that puts us into ground effect. So as we're rotating, getting into ground effect, you know, we're still well below our red line, which is minimum directional control speed. So we have to be constantly thinking about, I'm aborting. And that has to continue even after you're airborne, because you're in the multi-engine aircraft and you're going to get airborne prematurely. So in this scenario, I'm thinking that I'm going to abort the takeoff until I get to 90 knots. That's a decision that I've made. Now, normally the book calls for a rotation speed of 100 knots. Blue line in this one is 112 knots, which is our best rate of climb, single engine. So there's this period where you're kind of in no man's land. Now, you never want to be in no man's land, though, because you can't be sitting there when you're right by terrain, you don't have a long runway, you can't just be thinking, geez, what should I do now? So in this scenario, I've made the decision that at 90 knots, I'm gonna call it as positive rate, we're going gear up. And that way, if we have an engine failure after that, we're gonna continue the takeoff. And I do that because we're super lightweight today. I mean, I think we had 35 gallons aside. So, enough fuel for probably an hour and 45 minutes of flying, but we're low on fuel, so we're light. I'm the only person on the aircraft. I never allow anybody to fly with me into Manvel, just to make sure that we're light, there's no baggage. And so all of those factors, if we do have that engine failure, we've run the numbers, we have really great climb performance today. Again, I've gone through it, we have about a 12 knot headwind, so all of these factors make it safe. If we're gonna do anything that gets in the way of that, where it might create an unsafe situation or decrease our margin of safety, certainly we're not gonna do it. So you're gonna hear me call 90 knots, and that's when we're gonna continue the takeoff. All in all though, because we're so light today and we have so much excess thrust, which is what causes the aircraft to climb, really, quite honestly, an uneventful takeoff, a beautiful day to go fly. Please subscribe to my channel, please like the video, and share with whoever you think would enjoy it, and I thank you for watching. So for calculating our performance data today, here's our RAM conversion normal takeoff distance. So I'm going to find our weight here. Now I'm going to round everything up just for safety again. You're going to notice that once again, we do not have a calculation for grass. So I'm rounding everything up to be extra safe. So we're going to go here to 6,200 pounds. It's around just under 850 feet sea level, so we'll round up to 1,000 feet sea level. The temperature today is nice and cool. It's a little under 50 degrees. So if I come over here to the ground roll, just under 50 degrees is 1,517 feet. And if I had an obstacle, which I don't actually have an obstacle, you're going to see in the video, I go between obstacles, but that would be 1,934 feet, even if I needed to clear those obstacles. Now, as we saw in the landing video, you can see I don't have an exact calculation for a soft field. So if I take this 1,517 feet, and right now it's gusting to, well, it's picking up. I hesitate because when I first got out here, it was maybe 10 knots or so. And then as I leave, it's 15 gusting about a little over 20 knots. So it's picked up a little bit, but nevertheless, we're certainly going to reduce the roll by at least 7% for the headwind, and probably more than that. So that gives us a pretty substantial safety margin in the aircraft, and that's always what we want. You know, if we're going into that short grass runway, anything that we can do to either eliminate risk or reduce risk is certainly important. The next chart I'm going to look at is called the accelerate stop distance. Okay, so this is the distance it takes to accelerate to a specified speed, which once you start flying turbine aircraft or large airplanes, that's going to be V1. It's a much easier to basically consider for that speed. That'd be takeoff decision speed. But in this case, we're going to accelerate to a given speed, experience an engine failure, and then stop on the runway. So if I go, again, round up, I go to 1,000 feet, and then I come across to my temperature, which was just under 50 degrees, is 3,510 feet. Now, what we're going to also see in the accelerate go is that's more than the runway that we have available. Now, why is that important, or why would you consider that? Well, you know, just like a single engine airplane, if you have an engine failure and you have to continue straight ahead, you may go off the runway anyway. And so what this tells me as a pilot is that if I experience an engine failure and I'm going to elect to remain on the runway or come back down onto the runway, I am going to go over the allotted runway space. So whenever I take off and operate out of Manvel, I know where I want to move because I'm going to exceed the runway. So in Manvel, going to the south today, I'm going to be planning to drift to the right because there's a driveway that actually takes you up and then across the road versus hitting almost a wall if you stay to the left. So again, these are real considerations that you just have to make sure that you're ready ahead of time in the event that you have that emergency, so you know what to do. Taking a look at our accelerate go distance, that's the distance to accelerate to a given speed, experience an engine failure, and then continue the takeoff. So I'm going to again round up 6,200 feet, 1,000 feet field elevation, come across to 50 degrees, and I can see that it's 2,930 feet. So kind of surprising, but when you have a lot of excess power, especially in this aircraft, it's a lot shorter runway to continue the takeoff than it was to abort the takeoff. So for a lot of scenarios in this airplane, if you're trying to figure out what's the safest thing to do, it may be to continue our takeoff. So for today, you're going to hear me call out 90 knots is the decision that I've made that I'm going to continue the takeoff based on the weight that I'm at today and the atmospheric conditions and the runway condition. And I will tell you that probably more important than anything is that, quite frankly, you simply make a decision and you know what you're going to do ahead of time. The last thing that I'm going to use that's very important on any takeoff calculation is our rate of climb with one engine inoperative. And this gets a little tricky to show you here with a finger, so I'm gonna basically move my finger around, but I apologize while I'm holding this here. But we're gonna come down here and we're gonna start at our outside air temperature, which would be 50 degrees, about 10 degrees Celsius. And I'm gonna move straight up here till I get to my pressure altitude. You'll see that on the left column there. And that comes down. You can see the SL, that's sea level, and the 4 would be 4,000. So I'm gonna try to get to right around 1,000, and then we come straight across. And then we're gonna go down here, you can see the weight. So I'm going to follow these lines up because as I get lighter and lighter, I'm going to go up and up in my single engine climb performance. And as I come up, and again, I apologize with the finger here, but I'll come across, it's going to be right around 550 feet per minute that I should be able to climb at, and maybe a little bit more. Actually, it's going to be probably closer to 600 feet a minute. And then just like for those of you that fly the Seminole, you can see you have penalties here. So, you know, the big one there, of course, is if the engine does not get feathered right away, that's going to be a penalty of 400 feet per minute. So the nice thing is for me today, I will still continue to have single engine climb performance even if I can't get that engine to feather. And then again over here, you can see these speeds here at 6250. Okay, I'd want to shoot for a climb speed of 105 knots. Because we're a lot lighter, so our blue line of 112 at max gross weight is going to decrease to 105 knots. So again, you're going to hear me that 90 knots is not 105 knots, but that 90 knots gives me that buffer between my minimum control speed, so at least I'm safe, I'm not going to lose control of the airplane, as I accelerate to my emergency speed, in this case of 105 knots. Hope that helps us out in our takeoff performance. It looks like we're safe to go today. We have the excess climb performance single engine. We know what our decision is, and we're ready to go fly safely out of Manvel. Here we go.
All right. Right now we're just taxiing down the runway here. We're getting a good look of any obstacles that might be on the runway. We've got full back pressure on the elevator right now. Trying to keep as much weight off the nose as we can. We're going to use, of course, as much runway as we can. And for better or worse, it's been a dry few days here in Manvel, so the runway is nice and dry, very firm. Again, you can see this is where the floodwaters earlier this year really did a number on this runway. All right, we're going to get lined up here. We're going to use all the available runway that we can. All right, let's just make sure we got everything checked one more time. Fuel pumps are on low, mags are on high, mixture's rich, props high, flaps are at 0. All right, now we're going to use our maximum power available, and we're going to hold our brakes until we're ready to go. Again, on a normal soft field, you would keep the airplane rolling, but in this situation, we're going to want to make sure that we use all the available runway. All right, we're bringing up our power here. All right, we're going to give another nice check of the gauges. The gauges look green. Most important thing is to maintain directional control. We're going to be aborting up till about 90 knots. Once we call 90 knots, that's going to be our decision speed here, and we're going to bring the gear up and continue even if we have an engine failure. And we're going to hold the airplane in ground effect for just a little while. All right, we're past 30 inches. Gauges are still in the green. Gauges are still in the green. Takeoff power set, brakes release. All right, engine gauges are in the green. Airspeed's alive. Okay, we're starting to come off the ground. There we go. We're lower the nose, stay in ground effect. There's 80 knots, 90 knots. Positive rate gear's coming up. And we are airborne. We're gonna do a right turn out of here so we don't go into Grand Forks airspace. Alright, bring our climb power back here, 35 inches, 2,500 RPM.
Bravo Tower, green 50, runway 17 right, ready for departure.
And that was that. So we'll circle now, we'll contact Grand Forks Tower, and we'll head into Grand Forks.
Thanks again for watching. If you like the videos, please click the like button and hit the subscribe. I appreciate all my subscribers, and thank you very much. If there's anything specifically that you'd like to see, just drop it in the comments below. Thanks, have a good rest of your day.